how would you build a data pipeline system yourself? Like if you want to build a data pipeline solution from scratch, what are all the components that you need? Now, I see a lot less people building their own solutions. A lot of people jump into picking things out of the box. Airflow is very common. Obviously, I need to throw out Estuary because they're great and they can help you solve a lot of problems. But I still know that some people want to build their own data pipeline solutions. And so I want to go through everything you'll probably end up needing. Some of these things will definitely be extra. Like as you build, you can add them over time. But I want to go over the different components, because if you were serious about doing this, you kind of have to think through a lot of different things. You don't just want to start building your own thing from scratch and then not consider all the various ways things can go wrong, or making sure you've scoped it large enough in terms of like how big of a project am I actually doing before you go down this route. So let's dive into the components that you need if you're building your own data pipeline system. Now, let's start from scratch. If you were to try to build your first data pipeline, right? A lot of people will just build a very simple extract script, run their transform somehow in SQL, or load it immediately, whatever, but it's all probably more like a script, right? Like you've kind of almost written like a bunch of procedural steps. But there's a lot more that you need. And the first thing I often think about that you need to build in terms of like a component is something to manage connections and secrets. So when you think about it, these are the most important parts almost of your data pipeline, because you need a way to go to your data source and pull out the data, and you need a way to go and actually load it. And that's what I actually need. You need to make a connection to those places and then have a process that actually handles the extract and then the loading. And that's a lot, right? And then also on top of that, you need a way to make sure you're storing the credentials, one, in a way that's secure, and two, in a way that I don't have to define that connection if it's the same one 1,000 times, right? Like if I have to define a connection, give it all the correct information every time because every table or whatever, every pipeline needs it defined, that's a problem, because in the future, if I want to update that information, now I have to go to 1,000 different places to update it, right? I want to go to one place and preferably not code, and actually not just preferably, not in code, let's just say it, not in code, and make those changes, right? One, you don't want to do it because of security reasons, right? You don't want that in your Git repo. And two, you don't want to change code every time you need to make some sort of password change. And so you need a component that handles, again, one, how it's even going to pull the data in and out, right? Like how are you going to handle APIs, databases, throttling, all of these issues that you're going to run into as you're pulling data or chunking data if it's really big, or if you want to do CDC and do change data capture. Like there's a lot of steps, even just in how you're pulling that data, that matter. And I argue that's almost a separate component, the actual extract, than the connection itself, because then you have the actual connection management, which is all about, hey, how do I, again, store this information, make it easy to access and change, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just one component that I think is very important. And early on, you can probably put that like big data sets, handling big data sets and APIs to the side, because maybe you don't have that big of data. But eventually you're going to need that, right? So do consider that. But first, connections and secret management, very important. Next, as you're kind of going through, you're going to very quickly figure out that you need logging, right? Again, if you build your very first basic script, you're going to do some simple print statements. Hey, print that we got to this place, print however many rows we've pulled out. But eventually, right, if you start wanting to build these generic data pipelines, you need to be able to track, hey, was the issue with the pipeline? Was the issue with a library that wasn't updated correctly for the whole system? Was the issue, we can't find a table, like there's just like a table issue? What is the issue? One, obviously flag it back to me, tell me, but also I need to know, like, logging, what are you doing, right? Oftentimes at Facebook, what would happen is we would just have data pipelines sometimes die off nowhere, and we'd just be like, well, we don't know why I died. Like, I mean, there were plenty of times we knew why I died, but there was definitely some times where we like the Fed would say, oh, this is transitory. We don't know what the issue is, right? We're like, oh, we don't know. Like literally the log wouldn't help us. Like, it's not that we couldn't find it. It's like, well, literally something happened to whatever worker was doing that, and we don't have the information of why. And so we're just going to try rerunning it. And usually that's fine. Like usually it really was transitory and you'd rerun it and be fine. I don't think I ever had any issue where I was like, oh, I tried rerunning it and it's not fine and I can't find things in the log. But that is a good concept to think about. Like, how are you going to log? You can't have these errors happen and then you not be able to figure out why, unless it completely is transitory and you just need to reload it. That was fine. Next, some sort of dependency or like graph that actually tracks like what's going on, dependency awareness, right? You have this in Airflow, you have this in dbt for, all of these things have a method or a way of tracking and then eventually building a graph, right? Like before it even starts, it has like a parser that actually looks through everything. At least this is what I imagine. I need to probably even look through. I think there is a parser in dbt, but I don't know if this is how it does it. My guess is it looks through and looks for all the references to all these prior models and then builds a graph. And same thing with Airflow, right? You kind of parse everything first, say, hey, what are the references? What do I need to build this model, right? What does it need to look like? So you have to build some sort of graph as you're going through. And there's other ways you can build this dependency awareness. There's the very naive way. This is what I did when I was starting out in like 2015. I remember I had to do this, and I basically just created a table that would have the day of something running, the job name, and like the step in the process, right? So was it before or after something, essentially? And that would be the way I tracked it. It was like, hey, before you run this next query, like go and check this table and say, has this job run for today and was it successful? If not, yell at me and don't run. And that was my way of tracking dependency. It's, again, very naive. You have to almost do this at runtime every time and see what the graph is as you're going through. Next, the next thing you need is like some way to actually define the pipelines, right? Airflow has its way with operators and so on, but like there's actually something that needs to build the framework of the pipeline. dbt uses just basically your select statement, and then you can add some config with it, of course, and that config actually is very similar, right? You can almost look at it and say like, oh, there's like some steps here that tell it how to handle things that will eventually be translated into code. Like we need to do a merge statement. We need to do a create versus some sort of, create view versus create table. It's an insert versus append, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so you add all that in. So there's got to be a way that you define these pipelines and these various steps throughout the pipeline. Again, Airflow is more of an orchestrator, but like you can build a pipeline in it. And so there has to be a way that you actually define that pipeline. It's generally some sort of config base. Like you might have the SQL in it, or you might have some code, but like even when you put code into, let's say, Airflow, often you are just referencing a function that exists somewhere. Like it was just a task to be done, right? Like, hey, go get that function, pull it back here. But the main pipeline itself is defined in that DAG. And there's a lot of similar tools like this. And some are not obviously all code-based. Like if you're SSIS, you're defining it kind of in your package and you're dragging all these boxes, and there's different ways to do it. But like some way, you've got to be able to build this pipeline, so to speak. And they all kind of end up being config, right? SSIS becomes XML. If I recall, actually Glue, I'm trying to remember what it's under the hood. Oh, it's like Python, I think, under the hood when I remember looking at it. And if you just use the drag and drop, it kind of just configs it. If you look underneath, it's like, this is kind of just config that you're calling and then doing something with. And so it mostly ends up being config for anyone, configuration. Sorry, I realized I didn't define that. The next component that's really crucial is a scheduler, right? Something needs to run everything. With Airflow, you kind of end up have this cron-like scheduler, and then you can set up various things to act as the scheduler. I say scheduling is important because one of the things that we had happen a lot at Facebook was during daylight savings, we would have pipelines either run twice or kind of drop an hour because their scheduler was connected to Pacific time. And so one, you need to be very wary of what time zone you pick because, something like daylight savings will cause weird things to happen. But you do need something to actually act as the thing that runs everything. It says, hey, at this time we start, this pipeline runs at this time, this pipeline runs at this time. You generally need something to do all of those things. So some sort of scheduler, maybe it's just you putting on cron and connecting it to cron. It could be that simple. You could connect it to Jenkins. I've seen people do that. Not a fan of that. I did not like that. But I've seen people do that as well. And so just something has to run everything and actually say like when to start things. Oh, if you're SSIS, it's probably SQL Server Agent. Next, this one's more optional and newer, but I like to think about like execution engines and routing nowadays, because we have things like DuckDB and cheaper engines that you could use, or just more efficient at whatever task you're trying to do. So maybe you're still on Snowflake, or maybe you're trying to use Snowflake and Databricks. And I see so many companies try to like do this combination of both and spend so much money just like porting data from one data system to another, that to me, it just makes sense that you have some sort of routing that tries to figure out, hey, it's actually more efficient if we just took this data, ran it in DuckDB or some sort of Spark cluster locally or something similar. We ran it ourselves because it was so small, and then pushed it back. Now, this would be hard because you have to know the size of the data before running it. And I'd really be curious if this is possible But this is something that I'm definitely testing out as I'm building out my own, like, just a little experimental pipeline system, because I'm like, hey, would this work? Because I feel like this should work, right? I want to be able to route my queries more efficiently, and not just shove them all to whatever is the most expensive compute I have, right? Like, let's just send it all to Snowflake. I think it would make sense if, like, under the hood, it just did it without even noticing it. At Facebook, we could actually define it because we had, like, Presto, Hive, technically. People didn't really use it, and Spark, and you could just pick which engine you wanted. It was even easier because underneath the hood, we had our own, data lake, essentially, that would store all that information in tables that was agnostic of any compute, so you could always just change the compute. Okay, here's the last two things, and these are less optional. Well, depends. Data quality checks, definitely not optional, but if you make them so that they're very easy to implement, it just allows your end user to more easily integrate them into their flow, right? Everyone kind of has them. DBT, again, has this. Airflow has their data quality checks. We'll put up a few examples of how they kind of look. Again, it's just config. You're just defining things very easily. And then even with, like, DBT, you can bring in other open source libraries that actually add more, or open source libraries is probably not the right word, but like Elementary is an example where you can just bring it in and now reference other checks that are slightly more complex as well. And so having that ability just makes it that much easier. So you don't have to, like, write your own checks for inline, especially, or in pipeline, like data quality checks. So I think that's really important, is like having some ability to build those and make it easier for the developers to have, because otherwise they have to build their own and they'll be lazy and they won't, and just make it easy, right? Just make it easy for them. You'd rather have them maybe have too many checks almost. Actually, I wonder. Yeah, I still feel like you'd rather have too many checks than no checks, obviously. So yes, they won't pay attention to them eventually, but at least they have them and you can work on that, versus the other side where you have no checks and it's just blind. And then finally, I'm going to say UI. You need some sort of UI. You can get away without it. Technically, you could use just a CLI, right? But I think it's as your team grows, if you have hundreds of people that are needing to support their pipelines and need to be able to filter out which pipelines are theirs and which ones are not, I think it's very critical that you have a way to do that. And that way to do that is via often the UI, right? You have some searchability. Again, you look at Airflow, you look at something like at least DBT Cloud that has that ability, or some of DBT as well, right? Like you can have some limited UI capabilities, like just being able to see everything and see what's run, what hasn't run, how do I backfill things, et cetera, et cetera. Like these are important things to do, and it makes it easier. It's about giving your data team a better time maintaining whatever you build. So if you do it, you're going to eventually need a UI. Now, there's a few other things I'd like to consider as you're building this all out, because some of these are less components and more process related, but they often have like some sort of config in your pipeline. So for example, I have alerting and like routing on call situation. So that's often the config where you say like, hey, the owner of a team is whoever, here's how you're going to, or when you're going to alert them. So having that, I think, is very important, but that's often just more of a configuration or a feature. Some sort of item potency or ability to make sure you rerun or have safe reruns. That's generally less on the pipeline itself and more how you design the pipeline. So as you're building this, you need to make it easy for people to create pipelines that are item potent, versus just like letting them build these very wacky pipelines. At Facebook with DataSwarm, we just had insert overwrite for date partitions. Every date is pretty much treated individually, and it makes it a little easier. Plus, we would have a config that said, hey, does it depend on the past or does it not? Right? And so giving that ability for people to safely create pipelines that anyone can come into and rerun safely is key, right? Like you want to be able to have configurations to say, hey, is there some risk if I run this again and run historical data in the past, but don't rerun everything, right? Because if that's the case, I need it to rerun everything, maybe even without me thinking, right? Or at least to ask me, hey, if you rerun that day, we think you should rerun everything based on the configuration, right? Like you'd have that be a pop-up. And so that should be part of your pipeline. Again, it's a feature, probably a config that you're setting. And then finally, the last thing I'd recommend is like having some way to set up environment isolation and the ability to run things in production and push it easily, right? Again, this is more process-based, less on the pipeline. At Facebook, honestly, we just had test pipelines would run in the same environment that production pipelines would. I know it's scary, it sounds scary. It would just forcefully put tests in front of everything. So building a new table, dim fact or dim user, guess what? It's test_dim user. Or if you're like me, you could actually override it and I'd put rogo test _, especially if it was a commonly used table and other people might be working on it somewhere. I would just put my name on it as well. So that way I knew it, and then if anyone really was mad if I left a table somewhere, they could yell at me. Although we had a way to get rid of them automatically. But yeah, like have some way to separate that out, right? Like dbt does this to some degree as well, where it like automatically puts the username in front of things. I often go through and like add a little macro there and force it to put test in front of the schema. So I just force that so that if you are running it either locally or not via the main like scheduled job, like a production, your main scheduled job, it will just automatically put test in front of it. So you can't run it manually without, again, overriding it. You can often override some of these things, but then you have to consciously do that. And then that's on you, right? Like if you have consciously done that, decided to break the status quo, that is on you. That's not on me. So yeah, usually that's just what I try to do, is have some easy way to handle that switching, however you want to do it, whether it's switching some sort of config or making sure when you're in different environments, there's a config that says prod versus test, etc. Just make it very clear. But yeah, if you're trying to build a data pipeline, those are the components that you're going to need. So hopefully this video is helpful for anyone who's deciding to build their own data pipeline systems. Honestly, most of you probably shouldn't, but if you decide to, this is a lot of components that you need. If I missed any, please add them below, because I'm sure I have. So I'd love to hear about them. I'm kind of just testing it out myself. I'm not necessarily building anything. It's more of my own fun side project. So I'm trying to think through this as well. So thanks for watching this second video in the series. I've got more videos planned where we're going to actually be diving into like basic examples of pipelines and how to build them, etc., etc. With that, guys, I want to say thanks so much for watching this, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Thanks all. Goodbye.